All right, so the presidential election in the United States is about 2 weeks away.
Oh,
How are
damn.
you feeling toward the whole race in general?
You know, I've been for the last three elections I've been in. I've been told how they're the most important of my lifetime, and I think I've realized that that's a really good campaign slogan. I think it is important, but not in the sense that either candidate is going to significantly better the standard of living for Americans. So I'm just kind of exhausted from it, to be honest, than excited.
Is that messaging coming from both parties, or do you see one party pushing it more than?
Both in their own ways. I think Republicans are pushing it like there's a moral crisis that the great America that we've always known is being destroyed, which I don't know if it was ever that great to begin with. There's always been some major problems with our nation, and I think Democrats are pushing it that our democracy is under threat, and there are very serious concerns with another Trump administration in terms of the constitutional nature of our government. I would seriously question whether or not we are a democracy, just looking at one thing that both parties, even though they talk a lot about it, are guilty as sin towards, which is corporate and oligarchical interference. Both parties are very well funded by the private sector. So I think they both push it in their own ways and are both hypocritical in that. Yeah.
With campaign donations and super PACs and lobbyist groups and big donors, do you see those groups as getting more attention from the candidates than the actual average American person?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. And it should be very clear what those lobbying groups are. They're not build a road in Indiana, or unions or something. It's Walmart. It's JB Hunt. It's people around here who run, they do it at the state level, they do it at the local level, and they do it at the national level. It's the Koch brothers. It's Amazon. They're the guys who really, we don't live in Putin's Russia. Obviously we have a greater degree of popular participation in our society than others, but yeah, absolutely they do. And you can see that in Harris's moving to the right in most of her policies and such. And Trump's been pretty adamantly pro-private sector since the beginning. He is the private sector. He's a billionaire.
I've talked to a lot of young people that identify more with Harris's politics, but they're really upset with a lot of the stances she's taken in specifically regarding Gaza, but also how she's handled the endorsement of Dick Cheney. Can you give some insight into this?
Yeah, I think those are major issues with her and such. I think of when Hillary got not every endorsement's a good endorsement. You don't have to accept them. Hillary, I think, got the endorsement of David. Who was it? It was a Democrat. It may have not been Hillary, but it was a Democrat a couple years ago. Got the endorsement of David Duke, who used to be this big white supremacist, and they immediately disavowed it. Right. Dick Cheney was the guy who literally got us embroiled in Iraq. He's Satan. That's a charged statement, but it's true. He's Satan. Dick Cheney is Emperor Palpatine. He's just a straight up horrible man. It should be easy for Harris to say, actually, I don't accept this guy's endorsement. He doesn't represent. And I don't know if you know, she's now going to go start campaigning with his daughter Liz Cheney.
Really?
I don't believe you can say one moment that Republicans are a mortal threat to democracy, which I do believe they are a threat to the constitutional nature of our government, and then want to put them in your cabinet, and then I think you're kind of contradicting yourself there. As for Gaza, yeah, it's I was going to vote for Biden, and then I would have voted for Harris if she was on the ticket. Even though I don't like her, I would have voted for her if it weren't for Gaza. It's genocide. It is ethnic cleansing. I think young people grew up in classrooms being taught about slavery, Indian removal, the Holocaust, and we all grew up saying, how did they let this happen? And it's happening right now. And I think a lot of but I don't know if it's as many young people as you think. Many young people very quickly turned to Harris's side. I was a little bit disappointed about that. So I think it's good that people are, breaking with her on that. And I think they should. It's the only way you're going to get her to stop supporting Israel.
If there was a policy change that Harris proposed with Gaza, what could bring you back?
I would need to see some real commitment to that, because she's like, she'll say, oh, two-state solution and such, which, I mean, some of the worst Israeli prime ministers have claimed they wanted a two-state solution, right? If your two-state involves a demilitarized, unarmed Palestinian state that can't defend itself, I don't blame the Palestinians for not wanting that deal, and that's what's going to happen. They're not going to accept it. And it's also the other issue with it. That's a whole nother rant. As for what Harris could do, if she immediately disavowed Netanyahu's government, declared it to be engaging in a genocide, and treated it as the world treated apartheid South Africa 40 years ago, and just like embargoed it, isolated it, and made it clear that it would not be welcomed in what is the developed world until it ends those policies, then maybe, yeah, or even just, my God, I would at least be able to consider if she would just say, yes, they're committing genocide, we need to stop arms shipments. But she won't say that they're committing genocide. She won't even, they're now invading another sovereign nation, Lebanon, and she won't do anything about that. So honestly, I don't know. She'd have to really pull a turnaround. I'm certainly not going to vote for her, hoping she's going to be different after the election. So she'd have to really strongly change if she wanted my vote.
On the Israel policy, do you see any real difference any substantive difference between Trump's policy and what Biden and Harris have been doing?
The thing about Trump is he's obviously, a lot of people will say, oh, he'll be worse and such. And I don't doubt that he's going to be more militantly supportive of Israel. Yeah, he will be substantially different. But it's sort of like if somebody's robbing their home, and the robber tells you, yeah, but this other guy will come in and like blow your brains out, so at least let me rob your home. I know what Trump says he's gonna do. You're in the president. This is the whole issue with Biden and Harris, is they talk like they aren't the ones in the presidential office sometimes, or their supporters do. They're like, well, that's awful. Gee, I wish we could have someone to you're in there. Trump could be worse. But honestly, I don't know. And the thing is Trump has an isolationist bent, which is bad in its own way, but at least maybe he could, any president knows that, I hope that,
she's okay.
Okay, good. I think we're facing a regional war in the Middle East. Maybe, I doubt it though. I was going to say maybe he would because of his isolationist bent, wouldn't go into that. I don't know. I don't know what Trump is fully going to do. I know it's going to be at least as bad, if not worse. But I don't believe just because somebody's going to be worse, that means you go with someone who's also egregiously horrible on that issue. So.
Gotcha. I'd like to change the focus.
Totally.
Going into the end of this interview. Into the internet, all right? This is, for Gen Z, a lot of, really most of what we're hearing about this election is coming from
Do you mind
social
if I
media.
fry?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Sorry, thank you.
How big do you think the role of meme culture is going to be in this election?
I almost actually think it's going to be less than the past ones, because I went into high school when the 2016 election was going on. I went to college for my first semester when 2020 was going on. I think a lot of people are tired. We've had Trump as a candidate for the last three elections, for now the third election. I think it gets to a point where a lot of people, obviously diehard people, still love him and such, and they'll be memeing. I don't know. You can never underestimate the internet and such. I think I think for the average person, it's going to be I think less people are going to be participating, but I think there might be people posting more and more just outlandish, crazy shit. But I'll actually suggest maybe it'll be a little bit more tame than the last two.
It is interesting. So both candidates have been going more into alternate media and kind of been, they've been going around on the traditional media outlets like Fox and CNN and all those places. But there seems to be a shift, and now they're going on to podcasting. both campaigns have talked about doing the Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh, really?
If that were to happen, how do you think that would shape this political landscape?
You know, Joe Rogan is interesting because he'll actually sometimes push. He I don't like him because he platforms some really bad people sometimes, I think. And I'm not even just talking because they're far right or right wing and such, which is bad enough in my opinion, but also because they I think in the middle of COVID, you know, people who were anti-mask or anti-vaccination and such. I think that's very dangerous to public health and such. I think he'll give a bit of pushback to Trump. I almost think Harris could handle herself pretty well with Joe Rogan. I think Trump wouldn't. I think Trump is at this point, especially where he's like showing a lot of like aging factors and such, and he just does not get along with people who don't really kiss ass really well in his interviews and such. I think Harris could even do a little bit better. I think she could sort of pull Bernie, like when Bernie was on Rogan's show.
Oh yeah, I forgot
and
about
such.
that.
I think she could almost, and if she did, I think that would really help her.
Yeah.
I think she's done something. She still has keep in mind, I say this just objectively, not as a personal admiration. She's done a lot of things different than like say like a candidate like Hillary, who had a really bad reputation issue. Like she was very presented and really was very elitist as a candidate. Harris has done okay, at least I think better than Biden or Hillary at like attracting like sort of like Midwestern types, you know, very like just groups that I guess I'll just be open and say America is a very racist nation, and a black woman running on a ticket is always going to have to deal with that issue. Like even though I really disagree with her policies in Gaza and such, and I think she's like, you know, complacent in a genocide, that's a unfair a challenge that she'd have to deal with. I think she's dealing with that challenge pretty well. I think as well as she could as a black woman running
She
for
pointed
presidency.
Tim Walz too. And
Yes.
he's been really reaching out for that demographic.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I guess I'll just ask you one last thing. So, leading up to the election day, where will you be getting your news from?
I get a lot of my news, I probably shouldn't anymore, from Twitter,
Yeah.
because I will never call it X. I get a lot of it from that. I try to, there are a couple of publications I like, Democracy Now!
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend that what I digest isn't bias and such, but everything has bias. I think it's just trying to find a bias that is closest to the truth and such. Probably Democracy Now!, Twitter, and probably Reddit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, man.